The sky above the sea was black. Thick clouds moved slowly, hiding the moonlight. Waves crashed against the old cargo ship as it floated in the deep, endless waters. Most of the crew were sleeping. Only a few men worked in the shadows, moving, crates and checking their list, but one crate was different. It had no labels, no numbers, just a metal cage, locked tight. Inside it, a girl sat with her arms wrapped around her knees. Her skin was pale lavender marked with bruises. Her eyes, big and glowing faintly, looked empty. She was not crying, not screaming, not even blinking. She had no name, no voice left. She was cargo, a thing bought, used, and now thrown away. The two crewmen dragging her cage didn't care. One of them kicked the bars and laughed. "She's not even worth 10 credits, he muttered. "Captain said get rid of her." "Excess weight," the other replied. "Toss her like the rest." They dragged the cage to the edge of the ship. The sea below roared like a hungry beast. The girl looked up at the sky as if asking it something. The men didn't look at her again. With a loud creak of metal, the cage tipped and fell. Splash. The cold swallowed the sound. The girl disappeared into the dark water like she never existed, but someone heard it. On another ship not far away, a man was underwater. His name was Rayan, a deep-sea diver and salvager. He was fixing a sunken engine when the water shifted, strangely. A muffled splash echoed in his helmet. He looked up. Nothing. Just darkness above. Still something felt wrong. His gut twisted. Rayan swam quickly toward the sound. His spotlight cut through the black water like a knife. Then he saw it. A cage. It was sinking fast. Bubbles rose from it, and inside, he saw a shape. Small. Still. A girl? He didn't think. He didn't plan. He kicked hard and swam straight down. As he reached the cage, he saw her face pressed against the bars, eyes half closed. She was alive. Barely. Rayan pulled a tool from his belt and began cutting the lock. It was old and rusty. The metal screamed underwater, but he didn't stop. Time was slipping away. Air bubbles escaped the girl's nose. Clank. The lock broke. He reached in, grabbed her by the waist, and pulled her out. She didn't move, didn't fight. She was light, too light. Like a bird with broken wings. With all his strength, Rayan swam up, faster than ever. Back on his ship, Rayan placed her gently on the floor. His small vessel rocked with the waves, but he didn't care. He removed his helmet and gasped for breath. Then he checked her. She was cold. Skin like ice. Her fingers were blue. But he felt it. A weak pulse. "She's alive," he whispered. Rayan wrapped her in a warm emergency blanket. Her eyes opened just a little. No words. No fear. Just confusion and pain. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." She blinked once, then closed her eyes again. Later that night, Rayan sat beside her. He offered her warm soup, but she didn't touch it. He tried speaking in different languages, hoping she'd understand. But she stayed quiet, only watching him with cautious eyes. He didn't ask her where she came from. Not yet. Instead, he cleaned the bruises on her arms and covered her gently with another blanket. She didn't pull away. When he turned off the lights and lay in his bed across the small room, he looked over once more. She was still awake. She looked at the ceiling for a long time, then slowly crawled off the medical bed. Rayan stayed quiet. She walked barefoot to a small corner beside his bed. She sat there, curled up like a child, and for the first time Rayan saw something in her eyes. Fear. Not of him, but of the silence, of being alone, of the cold. He reached down, not touching her, just letting his hand rest nearby. She looked at it. Then, carefully, she placed her small hand over his. It was shaking. She was still afraid, but she chose his hand. That was enough. The storm had passed, but the sea was still restless. Waves rose and fell gently now, like a giant breathing in its sleep. Inside the small rescue ship, the air smelled of salt, metal, and something warm. Life. The alien girl lay on the bed, still wrapped in a silver thermal blanket. Her eyes were open now. Not wide with fear, but quiet with confusion. She looked at everything, the ceiling, the soft hum of the ship's engine, the human man sitting across from her. Ryan. He had saved her. Pulled her from the deep sea, broke open the cage, gave her warmth. And, most important, he hadn't asked anything from her. No questions, no demands. Just silence and safety. She didn't speak his language, but his kindness was clear. Ryan had given her water earlier. She drank only a little. When he offered food again, she stared at the bowl, unsure. Slowly, carefully, she picked up a piece of bread. She sniffed it first, then took a small bite. Ryan smiled. "Good," he said softly. "That's good." She didn't understand his words, but his tone, his face, they told her it was okay. She nodded. Just once. It was the first time her head had moved in reply to anyone in weeks. Later that morning, Ryan sat beside the ship's main console, watching her through the corner of his eye. She was touching the soft blanket with her fingers, feeling it like it was something new. To her, it probably was. He opened a small drawer and pulled out a notepad and pencil. He drew a simple stick figure of a girl, then another of a man. He pointed to himself and then to the picture of the man. "Me," he said. She looked at the drawing, then at him. Her head tilted slightly. Then he pointed to the girl in the picture. He gently touched her arm, then the paper. "You." She stared at it for a long time. Then slowly, she raised her hand and touched the paper. Ryan waited. She reached for the pencil. His heart jumped. She held it wrong at first, clumsily. But then, she drew something. 3 small lines, a circle, a strange symbol. He didn't understand it, but it was hers. She had answered him. When the sun was high, Ryan took her outside the cabin, onto the deck. The wind was soft now. The sea was calm. He wanted her to feel the sky, the fresh air, to know she wasn't locked away anymore. She walked, slowly, her legs weak, but she looked up, and froze. Above her, the open sky stretched wide and blue. There were no walls, no bars, no ceiling. Her breath caught in her throat. She had forgotten what freedom looked like. Ryan stood beside her, hands in his pockets, letting her take it all in. Then she pointed. A seagull flew overhead. She followed it with her eyes until it disappeared. And for the first time since she was thrown into the sea, she smiled. It was faint, shy, but real. Ryan didn't speak. He just watched her with quiet respect. She had been buried alive beneath the waves. Now she was breathing again. That night something changed. She made a small sound when he handed her dinner. A soft hum. Not a word, but close. Her voice was beginning to wake up. She let him brush out the knots in her hair. She didn't flinch when he gently wiped her arms clean with warm water. And before sleeping, she walked over to his bed, not the floor, and sat at the edge. She looked at him with those glowing eyes and placed her hand over her chest, then tapped her lips, then placed her hand on her heart again. "A name?" Ryan leaned forward. "Your name?" he asked. She nodded very slowly. He held out the notepad again. This time, she wrote in her own alien script. Ryan couldn't read it, but it was her. He pointed to the word and said gently, "Laura?" She blinked. Then, nodded. That was it. That was her. "Laura," he said again, smiling. Her eyes filled with something soft, something that had been missing too long. "Trust." That night, Rayan added a note to his logbook. Pulled something precious from the sea today. A life, a soul, her name is Laura, and she's no one's cargo now. Laura sat near the round window of the ship, her knees pulled close to her chest. Outside, stars slowly passed by like soft white lights drifting across black velvet. She didn't understand how the ship worked. She didn't know the name of this place. But it was the first time she had ever seen the stars without metal bars in the way. It was quiet, but not the kind of silence that hurt. This silence felt peaceful. Behind her, Rayan was fixing a broken scanner. He worked with small tools, humming a gentle tune. Sometimes he would talk, even if she didn't reply. He didn't expect her to. He just let her be. And that was new for her. No commands. No shouting. No pain. Only calm. Laura had never known calm. That morning she watched him more closely. When Rayan worked, he spoke softly to himself. This wire, then this bolt. Maybe this fuse. Laura tilted her head, curious. His words meant nothing, but his hands, his face, his patience. They told her a story she could follow. She stood and walked to him slowly. He looked up, surprised. Hey, he said with a smile. Need something? She shook her head, then pointed at the broken part. You want to help? She nodded. He handed her a small connector. Carefully she took it. Her fingers were unsure, but she didn't shake. He guided her gently, not by grabbing her hands, but by showing. Letting her copy him. Step by step she fixed her first wire. When it lit up green, she gasped softly. A small sound escaped her lips. Surprise. Wonder. Rayan grinned. Good job, Laura. She blinked, then placed her hand over her chest again. She liked hearing her name. Later that day, Rayan cooked simple food. The smell of warm spices filled the room. Laura stood in the doorway, watching him stir the pot. He offered her a spoonful. She hesitated, then tasted it. Her eyes lit up. She took the spoon from him and carefully stirred the pot herself. It was the first time she chose to touch something on her own. The moment was small, but powerful. She wasn't just being helped anymore. She was trying. That night, while Rayan slept, Laura walked quietly around the cabin. She looked at the shelves filled with books and tools. She saw a photo on the wall, Rayan with another man and a woman, smiling. Maybe family, maybe lost. She traced her fingers across the edges of the picture, then looked at her reflection in the small mirror nearby. Her skin had marks. Her face was thinner than before. But she wasn't just a prisoner now. She was someone. And for the first time in her life, she whispered something. Just a sound, not loud, not clear, but hers. She spoke into the silence. The next day, something strange happened. While Rayan checked the ship's signals, a red light blinked once on his console. Tracking ping, very faint, very distant, but real. His smile faded. He stood and checked the signal again. Laura came near and looked at the blinking light. She didn't understand what it was, but she saw his face change. Rayan looked at her. I think they're looking for you. Her eyes widened. He sat beside her and drew a picture. Her cage, falling into the sea. Then a ship, far away, with a blinking light. He pointed to the blinking dot. Bad people? He asked. She didn't answer with words. She just nodded. And then, something he didn't expect. She took his hand and drew a small circle in his palm using her finger. Then she drew a line through it. He stared at it. No return? She nodded. Her message was clear. If they find her, she dies. That evening, Rayan worked fast. He disconnected the cage's tracking chip that had been buried in her ankle bracelet. Carefully, he removed the old rusted metal from her skin and threw it into the See, Lura didn't scream, she didn't move. She just sat there, tears running down her cheeks. Not from pain, but from freedom. The last chain was gone. He cleaned the small wound gently and wrapped her foot. She reached out suddenly and hugged him. Not tight, not long, but real. And Rayan just held her back, whispering, "You're not alone anymore." That night, under the quiet stars, Lura sat beside him and wrote on the notepad again. This time she drew 2 stick figures. One had long hair, one had short hair. She drew a line between them. Then she drew a heart above them. Rayan looked at it. She looked away, shy. He said nothing, just smiled and held her hand. The ship reached the outer docking ring of Tovak Station by nightfall. From space, the station looked like a giant metal flower, quiet, peaceful. But inside, people whispered, watched, and traded secrets. Rayan didn't like it, but he needed supplies, fuel, food, and parts to keep his little ship moving. He looked at Lura. She was wrapped in her cloak, her eyes peeking out like a frightened animal. She had never stepped onto a station before. Never walked free among strangers. "It's only for a short time," Rayan said gently. "Stay close to me. Don't talk to anyone." Lura nodded. They stepped off the ship and into the cold, metallic halls of Docking Bay 4. Tovak Station was loud. Voices called out in different languages. Traders argued. Machines hummed. Security droids moved with red lights scanning everything. Lura flinched at every loud sound, but Rayan kept her close, shielding her from curious eyes. He bought food and a new ID chip, using up most of his credits. She can't be traced again, he muttered to himself. But something was already wrong. He didn't notice the man with the scarred face watching from the shadows, or the 2 others behind him whispering into their comms. They had seen Lura, and they had recognized her. Rayan stopped near a vending stall to grab a thermal blanket. Lura stood behind him, staring at a small music box in the shop's window. It played a soft lullaby. Her fingers twitched as if she knew the tune. Then, she froze. Across the hallway, a figure was walking toward her, not fast, not loud, but steady. One of the men from her past, one of the ones who had locked her in the cage. He smiled, but it was cold. Lura backed away. Her chest tightened. She couldn't scream. She couldn't breathe. She grabbed Rayan's sleeve. He turned and saw the man. Their eyes met, and just like that, everything exploded into chaos. "Get the girl," the man shouted. 2 more ran from behind. Shouts echoed. Civilians screamed and ran for cover. Rayan pulled Lura's arm. "Run!" They darted down the metal hallway, boots slamming against the ground. Behind them, heavy footsteps followed. Lura's legs were weak, but fear pushed her forward. They turned a corner. A locked gate blocked their way. Rayan cursed under his breath and slammed his fist against the panel. "Come on." The gate blinked green, just in time. They slipped through and slammed it shut behind them. The hunters stopped on the other side, snarling. "You can't hide forever, human," one of them barked. "She belongs to us." Rayan held Lura close, whispering, "No, she doesn't." They moved through the underlevels of the station, where few people ever walked. Pipes hissed, lights flickered. Lura trembled, her hand clutching his coat. "Why are they after you?" he whispered. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The fear in her eyes said enough. He stopped at an old maintenance hatch, opened it. Inside was a tiny tunnel that led back to Docking Bay 4. "We'll sneak through." Lura nodded. Her hands were bleeding slightly from the rough run, but she didn't complain. They crawled through darkness for 10 minutes. Every sound felt louder in the tunnel. Every creak made Rayan hold his breath. Finally, they reached the exit hatch near his ship. He peeked through a small gap. "Clear." He turned to her. "Almost there." They slipped out and ran across the platform, just meters from the ship. Rayan heard footsteps behind them. Too many. "Lura, go!" he shouted. She hesitated. Go! She ran up the ramp. Ryan turned, faced the hunters. 3 men, weapons drawn. You're outnumbered, one growled. Ryan raised his hand slowly. She's not your property. She was bought. We have records. She's worth thousands. She's a person? No, she's cargo. That word again. Ryan's eyes burned. He reached for his belt, threw a flash charge to the ground. Bang! The white light blinded them. Rayan turned and ran up the ramp, sealing the door shut behind him. Lura, start the ship. He yelled. She was already at the control panel, copying what she had watched him do before. The engines roared to life. They lifted off just as guards arrived. Too late. The ship vanished into the dark sky. Later, as the stars returned and silence fell inside the ship, Rayan sat on the floor, breathing hard. Lura walked up to him and sat beside him. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. She simply placed her hand on his chest. And for the first time, she whispered something in her broken, soft voice. Not cargo. Rayan looked at her and smiled. No, he said. You never were. The stars stretched wide across the black canvas of space. They sparkled quietly, millions of them, some blinking, some still. From the glass dome of Rayan's ship, it felt like they were flying through a sea of diamonds. Lura stood at the edge of the viewing deck, barefoot, silent. Her face glowed with soft starlight. Her eyes, wide, full of wonder, didn't blink. She pressed her palm against the glass as if she could feel the stars breathe. She had seen stars before, through bars, through the cracks of prison walls, cold, distant stars, but never like this. Never. Free. Rayan stood behind her, arms folded. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just watched her. Her thin shoulders rose and fell slowly. She didn't tremble anymore. She wasn't afraid of the ship. Not anymore. She turned her head toward him and smiled, not small, not shy, a real smile. The kind that says, I'm still alive. Rayan stepped forward. Beautiful, isn't it? She nodded. Then she reached for the pencil and notepad again. She drew a circle, then dots scattered around it. Then, with slow strokes, she drew a star and pointed to it. Rayan looked at it. That your home? She nodded again. Her eyes dimmed just a little. He sat beside her. Do you want to go back? She stared at the star, then shook her head slowly. Bad people? He asked gently. She didn't answer with words, but her hand curled into a fist. That was answer enough. Over the next few hours, they shared something unspoken. Rayan showed her how to steer the ship, how to scan for nearby signals, how to log star routes. Lura followed every movement with focused eyes. She learned quickly, faster than most, and every time she got something right, Rayan would smile and nod. She'd smile back, proud. She didn't speak often, but she listened to everything. She wanted to learn. She wanted to live. Later, Rayan brought out a gift. It was a necklace, thin metal wire with a tiny glass charm, shaped like a star. Simple, but beautiful. I made this, he said, holding it out to her. For you. Lura stared at it. She didn't reach for it at first. Then slowly, she took it in her palm. Her fingers closed around it gently, like she was afraid it might disappear. Then she looked up at him and mouthed something. Thank you. 2. Simple words, soft, broken, but hers. Rayan felt a lump in his throat. He didn't say anything. He only nodded. That night, Rayan checked the navigation screen. A faint pulse was blinking again. Not close, but closer than before. They were still being followed. He powered down their signature and rerouted their path into the deep asteroid field nearby. When he came back to the main room, Lura was sitting in the dark. She wasn't sleeping. She was holding the star necklace in her hands. He sat beside her. They haven't stopped, he said. She looked at him. No fear this time, only calm. She placed the necklace around her neck, then held out her hand, drawing a small star in the air between them, then a tiny stick figure beside it. He watched her movements carefully. You want to find your own place? He guessed. She nodded. Not your old planet? She shook her head. You want a new home? She nodded again. Her eyes didn't ask him to build it for her. They just wanted him to stay, to keep flying, to keep showing her the stars, to never let her fall again. Suddenly, a loud beeping echoed through the ship. Rayan rushed to the console. Another pulse. But this one wasn't a tracker. It was a message. A bounty had been placed. On her. Alive. Lura stood behind him, reading the strange letters on the screen. She understood enough, her hands began to shake. Don't worry, Rayan said. They'll have to go through me. She looked at him and did something unexpected. She pressed her forehead gently against his. Her people's way of saying thank you for becoming my shield. He didn't move, didn't speak, just closed his eyes and whispered, We'll keep flying. Outside the window, stars blinked again. But now, she wasn't just watching them. She was part of them. She had touched the stars, and they hadn't turned away. The stars were silent, but danger was not. Inside the ship, a red light blinked again, sharp, steady. It wasn't a false alarm this time. A real ship was following them. Fast. Too fast for a traitor. Too focused for a wanderer. Rayan stared at the scanner. He didn't need to guess. They found us, he whispered. Behind him, Lura stood, frozen. Her necklace trembled against her chest. She had seen that light before. Long ago. On the day she was taken. The day her world became a cage. Now, it was back. The past had found her. Rayan jumped into the pilot's seat. I'll lose them in the ice field. Strap in. Lura didn't move at first. Then she ran to her seat and locked the harness tight. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes stayed open. She was tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. Outside, the ship turned hard and dove into the field of frozen asteroids. Huge blocks of space ice floated in silence like ancient ghosts. One hit could destroy them. Rayan dodged left, then right, his jaw tight. They're still behind us. Lura pressed a few buttons on the side screen, showing a small image of the enemy ship. Her breath caught. It was them, not just bounty hunters. The same crew who had sold her, caged her, thrown her into the sea. The worst of them, Zirak, the one with one golden eye and a voice like poison. He was still alive. And he wanted her back. The enemy ship sent a transmission. A deep, mocking voice filled their cabin. Return the asset, human. No need to die for something broken. Rayan slammed his fist on the control. She's not broken. Lura flinched. Not from fear, but from surprise. No one had ever defended her like that. Zirak laughed through the speakers. Fine. Then both of you will break together. The ship shook as a warning blast hit their rear thruster. Lights flickered. Shields holding, Rayan muttered. But not for long. Lura unstrapped herself, ran to the storage cabinet, pulled out a small black box she had seen Rayan use during repairs. Rayan looked over. What are you? She held up the box and pointed at the scanner port. Realization hit him. She had learned, watched, understood. You want to trick them? She nodded quickly, then pressed her finger to the panel and typed fast. Rayan stared. She was setting a false signal. A fake beacon that made it look like their ship had crashed into a nearby asteroid. He uploaded the signal to a drone and launched. Seconds later, it exploded. The enemy ship swerved toward it like a shark smelling blood. They took the bait, Rayan whispered, but it wouldn't last. Not with Zirak. They landed on a hidden moon covered in jagged rocks and icy winds. Rayan powered down everything, hiding the ship's heat signature. He turned to Lura. We have maybe 10 minutes before they figure it out. She looked around the ship, her eyes scanning every wire, every corner, every tool. Then she touched his arm and pointed to the back panel, a secret maintenance hatch. He blinked. "You want to hide?" She shook her head. Then she pointed to herself, then to the hatch, then drew a quick shape on the wall with her finger. A bomb. Rayanne's eyes widened. "You're going to trap them?" She nodded. Her hands were steady now. Not the hands of a scared girl, but of someone who had been hunted too long and was ready to fight back. Moments later, Zarek's crew landed. 4 of them. Armed, angry, loud. They stormed the silent ship. "Search everywhere," Zarek barked. "She's..." Here they split up. One went left, one checked the cabin. Zarek and another stepped toward the back. The lights flickered, on purpose. The power core had been set to draw attention. Zarek smirked. "There you are." He yanked open the back panel. A shadow moved. Lura. She stood there, wrapped in her cloak, her eyes locked on his. "You really thought you could run?" Zarek sneered. "Come here." She didn't move. She simply pressed a button. Boom! Smoke filled the ship. Sparks flew. Zarek screamed, falling back. His men shouted. The trap hadn't killed them, but it gave Rayan time. He burst from the top hatch. "Blaster ready." Lura ducked and rolled as Rayan fired a warning shot, forcing the crew back. "Run, Lura!" he shouted. She didn't run. She kicked over a metal pipe and threw it toward the flaming wire, causing a small second blast that forced the men outside. Rayan pulled her up. They ran together toward the emergency shuttle bay. Inside the escape pod they launched just before Zarek's team could follow. The enemy ship fired, missed, then vanished behind smoke and fire. Hours later, drifting in silence again, Lura curled beside Rayan. Her arm was burned, her foot bruised, but her eyes, alive, strong. She looked at him and whispered, "Thank you for standing." Rayan turned to her and said softly, "Thank you for fighting." They weren't running anymore. Now, they were choosing their path. Together. The stars were quiet again. The little escape pod floated in the dark, far away from bounty hunters' cages and screams. No blinking trackers, no voices calling Lura cargo. Just silence and peace. Rayan sat at the controls, bruised and tired. A shallow cut ran down his arm, but he didn't care. Lura sat across from him, wrapped in a warm blanket, her head resting against the curved wall. Her hand still clutched the small star-shaped necklace he'd given her. It had survived everything, just like her. She wasn't crying. She wasn't trembling. She was breathing. Alive, free. "Ship signal is dead," Rayan said softly, looking at the broken scanner. "No one's following us now." Lura looked up slowly. Her eyes held something new, something he hadn't seen before. Calm. She unwrapped the blanket and stood on wobbly legs. She stepped beside him, placed her hand on his and whispered, "Where? Now?" Her voice was soft but clear. Each word felt like a sunrise. Rayan smiled, surprised and proud. "Anywhere you want." She looked out the small window. The stars blinked like tiny doors waiting to be opened. Then she reached for the notepad, drew a circle, a tiny house with smoke, a tree, and 2 figures, one tall, one small, then a heart between them. Rayan stared. "You want a home?" She nodded, then added something else. A 3rd figure, even smaller, childlike. Rayan's eyes widened. "Family?" he asked softly. Lura didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her face said it all. She wasn't asking for a planet, a kingdom, or safety in the stars. She wanted something deeper. Belonging. Days passed. They drifted through quiet space, heading toward the green moon of Elema, a peaceful outpost where no one asked questions and strangers could start new lives. They landed beside a lake, surrounded by glowing trees and soft winds. The locals didn't stare. They welcomed the pair with quiet respect. No IDs. No history. Just now, Rayan built a small home from scrap and wood. It wasn't much, but it was real. Lura planted flowers beside the door. She smiled every time they bloomed. Weeks later, Rayan came home from gathering supplies. He walked inside and stopped. Lura stood in the middle of the room, clean dress, glowing skin, soft eyes, and holding a small package. She handed it to him. He opened it slowly. Inside was a thin ring made of crystal and wire. She pointed to it, then to herself, then to him. Rayan's heart beat faster. "Are you asking me?" She stepped close, very close, then whispered, "You opened the cage. Now open my heart." Tears filled his eyes. He nodded. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." She smiled and leaned her head against his chest. She was no longer someone who needed saving. She had become someone who gave love. Months passed. Rayan and Lura became a strange but loved pair on the green moon. People called them the Starman and his light. One day, a traveler asked Rayan, "Where did you find her?" He simply smiled. "She wasn't found," he said. "She was freed." No one knew the full story. No one needed to. Because the girl who once sat in a cage beneath the sea now danced barefoot in the rain, laughed by the lake, and painted stars on her new home's ceiling. And when children asked her why she always wore that star necklace, she would kneel down, hold it up, and say, "This was the first thing ever given to me." "And what did you give in return?" they'd ask. She'd smile. "Everything." One quiet night under the stars, Lura sat beside Rayan on the porch. She held his hand and whispered, "Thank you for not walking away." He looked at her, kissed her forehead, and replied, "Thank you for teaching me what freedom really means." Above them the stars twinkled, but this time she didn't need to touch them, because she had already become one. Not trapped, not lost, not silent. She was no longer caged. She was home.